I'm going to teach you how to sound like this on FL Studio.
You can download this preset right now. Link in the description. Go now. Or in the pinned comment. Easy. The largest that you ever seen.
Before we begin, if you like this vocal preset and want to download it for yourself, you can do so by clicking the first link in the description or the pinned comment. But without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to need is a fruity limiter, but not to limit or compress. It's quite honestly just to use this noise gate. So if I quiet the track while still letting you see it visually, as you can see, this is the vocal, this is the peaks, the transients, what have you. But underneath, anytime that I breathe in or cough or anything of the like, that's what you see down there as very minuscule little background noises that kind of make the track feel unprofessional. So what I basically did was I put the threshold, which is, if I expand it, you can see it even better now, this yellow sort of bar. So basically anything under that will be completely silenced, whereas everything on top will be audible. And the main reason I wanted to put this as the first plugin was basically just because once we start compressing it, that's going to raise the volume of all the coughing and the humming and all the background noises, and we really don't want that. So I wanted to kill that immediately off rip so that it wouldn't become a bigger problem in the future. Then I added the first of two EQs. And this was only to remove the rumbling frequencies down here in the sub bass. Now, knowing Big X and his vocals, he has a much deeper, huskier voice, so we really don't want to EQ more than that. Oftentimes for tenor singers or those like higher pitch vocalists, you can get away with cutting a lot of bass and even going a bit up to the low mids. But in this case, absolutely not. We want to preserve the huskier frequencies of his vocals, so really I just cut it at around 80-90 hertz with a high pass and only a steep 4. We don't want to get too intense with a steep 8. Then I added the first of two compressors, and again I used the fruity limiter more than anything just so you have a visual component. I feel like it's really helpful for beginners to sort of understand and see visually what they're doing, because I completely understand that concepts like compression and EQ, if you don't really know what you're doing to begin with, seem very difficult, when in reality they're not. The only things that really matter here are the threshold, the ratio, attack and release, and gain. And if you want me to explain really quickly, the threshold, similar to the gate, is anything on top of this threshold or this blue line will be subject to compression. Now, how much it gets compressed depends on the ratio. So a 4:1, meaning that for every 4 decibels, it'll turn into only 1. And the attack and release are basically how fast it gets compressed, which is important because if you go at a really fast attack, that cuts the transient, like the really sharp beginning of a vocal will get compressed as well. And what typically happens when you do that is it makes it sound like it's more in the background. And since we don't want that and we want it to sound like he's in the forefront of the beat and whatnot, I put it at about a 20 millisecond attack time. So it takes 20 milliseconds for the compressor to hit, which lets the transient and that beginning oomph of the vocal slide in without any problems, and the rest of the vocal will get compressed. And the release is how fast it takes for the compression to go back to normal, to start over again. And it kind of is a case-by-case basis, but for me, around a 250 millisecond thing didn't seem like a huge problem. And then the makeup gain essentially is just to make up for lost volume. Obviously, compressing the vocal is going to make it quieter because we want to sort of balance out and not have too much dynamic range in terms of really loud parts and really quiet parts. So just by doing all this, we're gonna lose a lot of volume, and we make up for it with the makeup gain over here, and I put 5 decibels extra. And you can see it visually. This is why I like the fruity limiter. You can see this is the peaks of when it gets compressed, and then the purple line over here is the makeup gain and what we make up for lost volume.
If you're trying to level up your music career and want to upload your music to Spotify, Apple Music, you name it, click the second link in the description because that's going to get you 7% off of DistroKid, the best music distribution platform on the internet. It's already only $20 for you to upload an unlimited amount of songs and albums, so 7% off that is even better. Again, second link in the description. Now back to the tutorial.
Now I added a second compressor, but this one is more for a specific reason. This is a multi-band compressor, so it'll compress 3 different parts, either the low frequencies, the mid frequencies, and the high frequencies. And the reason why I specifically want to use it for this preset is because, like I said, Big X is known for a really deep husky voice, and I wanted to treat the different vocal frequencies differently. In particular, putting a lot of prevalence in the mid frequencies and the low frequencies. I didn't compress nearly as much the mid and the low frequencies, but I wanted more so just to boost them up a bit and give them a bit more character and make them come more alive. Then I added the second EQ, and this is more so to remove unwanted frequencies, harsh frequencies that aren't really desirable. And typically the way I do it is I'll get a band, I'll narrow it quite a bit. So usually it can be, sometimes it'll start off like this, and I would narrow it really to like a in between 0 and 10%, and then I'd raise it all the way up, and I'd start sweeping around and trying to find undesirable frequencies. You'll know what this is totally depends on your ear and having the proper taste to know this is not desirable. I don't want this in my vocal whatsoever. I can't spoon feed it to you. This is purely a recommendation thing in terms of my preset, but it really does depend on the person. And once I have that, I drop it all the way down to in between 3, if I want to get a bit more extreme, 5, but right now in this case I only put 3 decibels, over here 2, etc. Then I boosted the lows a little bit since there wasn't really any sub frequencies or not that many prevalent ones. I boosted it up the bass just to again get that oomph and that big X sound, right? I also boosted the highs a bit just so there's that shiny top end to make it come out and stand out in front of the beat. And then I added a saturator with sound geyser, but very little, only 7%. I feel like more makes it sound very overly compressed and distorted, and I'm not a big fan of that. But just to have a shiny top. Now, for most of my presets, I really try to only keep stock plugins, but I have to make an exception with this one, just because I infinitely prefer the FabFilter de-esser as opposed to Maximus, which I just never really feel like I'm getting any changes from. And all I really did was I just put it in male split band, and you can toggle it to taste and you can go to thresholds and range and whatnot, but really, like, I do see a difference here, and I do really feel like it removes the harsh S sounds that are prevalent in a mix. And then finally, I added a fruity reverb too, and again, very little. You can barely hear it in his recordings. This is purely to cushion the vocal on top of the beat. So it has a dry of 100% and a wet level of 10%, and just tiny things like having a small room size, a small decay, you know, messing around with the high and low cut, but really it is just purely to cushion it in on top of the beat, and that's it. But that's how you get a BIGXTHAPLUG vocal preset on FL Studio. Again, if you like the vocal preset from the beginning and you want to download it yourself, you can do so by clicking the first link in the description or the pinned comment. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell for more tutorials like this. Comment below what other artists you want me to tackle, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.